and you have been hearing. Tonight, I will be, my co-host will not be here with me this evening. Again, it's Father's Day, and so unfortunately, Hatley Adams will not be able to be with me. But I will be speaking with Patrick John Alexander, and he is the CEO and the founder of Balampico, a digital marketing agency which helps companies improve their returns on investment as much as 10 times. Wow, that's a big kind of company, Dominican at heart. So tonight, listen to Patrick John. He is the independent baby of 1978. So you will listen to his Lakou story, and as we know, on the popular Sunday night program Discoveries, the Lakou experience from 7. So Patrick John, and many of us, we will remember the name Patrick John. So just want to say good evening to you, Patrick.
Good evening. Good evening, Cecil.
All right. It's good to have you in studio, and I just want to apologize to you for the late start, but we are here anyway. Started some 40 minutes later than normal, but we are here. Patrick, young man, excited to be here with me. I know that because we spoke sometime last week, and you immediately approve you are coming to DBS Radio. Patrick John Alexander, I should say 3 interesting names. His 2 first names, I'm very interested, and you're going to know something about Alexander, which is very, very interesting too. So you know that son of the soil is going to tell us quite a lot. He is from Point Michel, and he will tell us about his mom, his brothers, his sisters, if he has any, and we're going to have a good talk. And I'm sure tonight our listeners and our viewers are going to be really, really elated when they hear the story of Patrick John. So again, Patrick, let's go on. Tell us a little bit of Patrick, especially the name of your mom, the name of your dad, and from there we'll continue.
So do you want me to start off when I was born, or you want me to start with the name of my parents, or? Yeah, can I hear you?
You hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah. So I am saying to you that you need to tell me, yes, when you were born.
Right.
And we go down the line.
Okay. So as the listeners are listening right now, so my name is Patrick Roland Alexander, and I am recently I started to say I'm the firstborn citizen of Dominica, and I tend to raise eyebrows. And so anybody that was born before me was, belonged to the crown, and everybody that came after me was after me as a citizen. So I was born November 3rd, 1978, a few minutes after midnight, and my grandmother said, hey, because of the significance of my birth, that I should be named after our first Prime Minister. So my name is Patrick Roland Alexander, and I was held by Princess Margaret of Wales. She came to give the Declaration of Independence on behalf of the Queen, her sister, Queen Elizabeth. And I tend to brag that I was held by royalty. And me being born that day, I share with everyone that I am the official independence baby of Dominica. And I share it with pride, right? Because being born that day, I got my education paid for. One of the things that happened, apart from getting hampers and a lot of hampers, I guess, and other special gifts for babies.
And that's you, right? Right here.
That's me.
Did you know this was the first baby born on November 3rd, 1978 in Dominica? His name, Patrick Roland Alexander.
Right.
So persons who are actually looking on Facebook or on YouTube, you'll definitely will see that.
My daughter, she's 7. She was teasing me and telling me it doesn't look like me. But it is me, yes, it is me.
And you said that you were held by the Queen.
Like, well, the Queen's sister, Princess Margaret of Wales. I think at that time, anybody that's like love history like me, the Crown, the British was giving a lot of independence to a lot of the former British colonies at that time. And to make it official, they needed a representative from the Crown. And Princess Margaret was representing her sister, the Queen. And she's the one that the hospital was originally named after. And she held me in her arms as a baby.
Okay, so we are watching as we are speaking the day that you were born.
Mm-hmm.
And it is said that Nurse James of the Princess Margaret Hospital on the left
Right.
Holds up the Independence baby from Princess Margaret Hospital, 6 from the left. So
Princess Margaret was there, right? She
Mhm.
was there as well.
Yeah.
So So at some point, I guess she held me as well.
and they said on the right was the Health Minister Randolph Barnes.
Correct.
So the Minister of Health was present, and also the princess, was present, and you were held by Nurse James. You know who's that Nurse James?
Do I know her?
Do you know who she is?
No, I don't.
You have never tried. I wonder if Nurse James. Let me see. Is it the mother? I'm trying to find out. Is it the mother? No, it's not the mother of Doreen Paul. I doubt.
Right.
But I'm trying to guess. But I want someone in the public to call me. And I wish it would be Nurse James that would call me to say, yes, I am the one who held Patrick, Roland, John on that day. So you said that on that day, your grandmother decided to name you after Patrick John, the Prime Minister of Dominica.
Yes, my grandmother was a visionary.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to him recently, Mr. Oliver Seraphin, OJ Seraphin. He actually was my godfather at birth as well. So just really adding significance to my birth.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
and he told me he's the only living minister from that time.
So let's go back a bit. Let's go back a bit. I like that. I like that history. Yeah. That's important. So you're saying that you were born on Independence Day. Did your mom say to you the time that you were born?
It was a few minutes after midnight, and so it was a very interesting fanfare, because there's other people that knew about that the first baby being born that they would have gotten a lot of hampers, a lot of prizes, right? But my mom was only 17, so that's the last thing from her mind. So 5 of us were born on that day.
5 of you all?
5 of us, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I actually met some of the others over the years because we went to college together. One of my good buddies in SMA, his name is Win Shillingford, right? So he and I went to SMA together, and we shared birthday. And I think there was someone else from Portsmouth, and it was Nadira, if I recall properly. I met her in college, yeah. But what my mom told me about that experience is that a number of persons was trying to have their child on that day.
The first to have the child on that day.
Yeah, correct. If you're first, you get certain,
benefits.
Certain benefits, yeah.
Well, someone told me that the nurse James has since passed on, and he said that she is the mother of Doreen Paul. So that is her mother was a former minister of health.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and her daughter was the former minister of health. That's Doreen Paul.
I know that.
And yes, someone said to me that is Nurse James.
Right. And that's we're talking about the history of Dominica, right? I'm very, as you said, I'm very tied to the history of Dominica. The second Prime Minister, Mary Eugenia Charles, was my cousin on the mother's side, sorry. So she was my grandma's first cousin. My grandma was a Charles before she got married, and she's from Point Michel.
So you're saying, but listen, you have a lot in you. So you're saying to me And we're only now speaking on your mother's side.
My mother's side.
Yeah, we're not going to your father yet.
My father, yeah.
So you're saying that born on the 3rd of November, a few minutes after midnight, you were held by the princess, Princess Margaret. You were also held. The first nurse to have held you was Nurse James. Her daughter eventually became the Minister of Health. And you said that O.J. Seraphine is your godfather at birth.
Correct.
And you just said something a while ago?
That the second Prime Minister, Mary Eugenia Charles, is my cousin on the mother's side. Is my grandma's first cousin from Point Michel. I can hear you now, though. You gotta fix your mic.
Yeah, I was saying to you that I heard that part. That Mary Eugenia Charles is your mom's cousin.
Correct.
Because your grandmother was a Charles before she became a Felix.
Exactly.
All right. And so you are royalty.
Right.
Can you say that? Can we say that?
Well, I mean by, if you want to put it that way, yeah, by Dominica. I always say I'm very ingrained with the history of Dominica. And as you know, the story gets more interesting as well. You know. And the Prime Minister after that, Edison James, he is my cousin on the father's side. He's my father's cousin.
So that's where we're going to come in a little while. So we'll come to the father in a little while.
Oh, yeah, my father, yes.
Right.
Again, really tied to the history.
Right. And so you, at that period, you grew up as a boy.
Mm-hmm.
You were told of all of these things as a boy by your mom or your grandmom of your life, the day that you were born. How did you ever thought of being a politician? Have you ever thought of being a politician?
I mean, I thought about it. You know, I actually remember giving an interview. If you get back into perspective, you talk about my mom. My mom had me when she was 17, right? And my mom is Gloria Felix Dominic. And she had me when she was 17. And I came from humble beginnings. And one of the things that I learned from an early age that education is the way out of poverty, right? So, and because of that, I took my education very, very seriously. You know, I guess what you want to call a geek. I used to read all the time. I read all the time growing up. I remember we not being able to afford a library card, back in the day, And I grew up in Point Michel. We had the Voice of Life radio. I don't know too many people remember them. They had a library there. They had the public library. I couldn't afford to get a library card. And what I did growing up is in every classroom, there was what is called a library corner, and I would read every book.
So you know what?
Yeah.
That is intriguing. We will wait for that part when we speak about the school life.
Right.
All right. That is your mom.
That's my mom. Yes.
Yes. And yourself.
So I'm guessing at that time that was 1988. Let me give you the backstory. That 1988.
Mm-hmm.
So wow, my mom was 27 then, and I was 10. Mm-hmm. I don't think any 17-year-old, just so you know, should be raising a child. I hung out with my 17-year-old nephew yesterday, but he has no business raising a child, right? So no 17-year-old.
That is a story written by Paula Warner of the Independent Baby at the age of 10.
Yeah, and if you looking at it on YouTube, it's out there. Mm-hmm. And what happened at 10 years old is the government decided that everyone born on that day, the 5 babies would have gotten a scholarship if they just passed the common entrance examination. And that was my first official interview. And when they asked at 10 years old, what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said, just looking at what the country had, the most privileged positions when it comes to employment and career path. I had a bank on there. And I said, it's right there on the 3rd or 4th paragraph, say I wanted to be Prime Minister one day. But that was, a 10-year-old talking. And my grandma said that she wouldn't necessarily want any of her children or grandchildren involved in politics. You know, a big fan of politics from that standpoint. Having a family directly involved, so I decided that at some point to stay away from politics. But my grandma passed away recently, so that is, the future has not been written.
Okay, so
and I think there's, apart from politics, there's other ways. And when I get into my accomplishments of what I've accomplished, there's other ways I can contribute to the country as well.
So Alvin Thomas said, "Good to see you, my friend Patrick Alexander. Happy Father's Day to you."
Thank you, Alvin.
My bro, and happy Father's Day to you also, as well, Cecil Joseph. And Dyer Breyer says, good morning from London. So someone from London is actually watching. My lovely little sister, Emmeline Mann, says in Connecticut she's watching. And I know that she has always been watching every Sunday night, but she says that Auntie is looking on. That is Teresa Frigis. She's looking on and she says good night to you.
Yeah, Auntie.
She says good night to you, Pato. So that's the pet name.
Yes, Pato.
You have 2 pet names, right?
Yes.
And the other one is what?
Balambi, yeah.
That's the name of your company.
No, that's my nickname.
Oh, that's your nickname.
So what I usually get into, like I said, we have a long 3-4 hours, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
When you get into that part of it, I think this is a podcast, so we can kind of go, just chronologically out of chronology. But what happened is I started my business in 2011, and it's a website and a digital marketing agency. And when I wanted to name the company, everything website related, if you wanted to get a domain name, was taken. And I had it's called a blue sky vision about your company, what you wanted to look like, in 5-10 years. And it's like, I say, well, I want to look like Google, Uber, Pinterest, Amazon. And if you start thinking about these company names, what do they have in common, right? So what they have in common, they are unique names. So before Google, there was no Google. Before Uber, there was no Uber. Before Pinterest, there was no Pinterest. So what's unique about me is my nickname growing up, Balambi. So Balambi Incorporated is Balampico. So if you search for Balampico, you'd only see pictures of me, my company, pictures of my wife. That's my business partner.
Thank you. So here it is. We spoke, and we'll mix up the discussion, because we're not having an interview, we're having a discussion.
Exactly.
And so your father's name is Matthias Alexander, is that correct?
Stephen Matthias Alexander, correct.
I remembered him as Matthias Alexander.
Right. They think they call him Alex.
Yes, some people call him Alex.
Yes.
I knew him in Bath State in his early days. Police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, he was your father. Tell us.
Right. So, my father is from Wesley, and he's one of 15 on his dad's side and one of 12 or 13 on his mom's side, And something I always tell people, just commercially back to me, is that I have about between 150 and 200 first cousins. And because my grandfather on my mom's side had about 15 kids as well. So on average, I have combined about 40 aunts and uncles. So I have about, and on average, I have about 5 kids each. So between 150 and 200 first cousins. And if anybody's listening from like Woodfordale, for example, I understood I'm related to like 95% of Woodfordale. Anyone with the last name Abraham is my relative. But my dad was a policeman, and anyone familiar with the history of Dominica, you remember the coup that we had in 1981? My dad was one of the 2 policemen that got shot in that coup, and I was 3 years old when he passed away.
That is amazing. Your cousin, Uriah Prince, says happy Father's Day, cuz.
Thank you.
Right. That is strange that Mr. Alexander, police officer, who served Dominica for a number of years. Son was born on November 3rd, on 3rd of November, sorry. And his son when he was 3 years old, Mr. Alexander, in a attempt coup, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
working at the police headquarters and the front desk, got shot.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit more of what you would have known or what you were told.
About the actual incident, about my dad and the whole.
About your dad.
I mean, I was told that my dad was kind of like me as well, very easygoing. And when it came to work, he was very serious. He was very jovial. And he was liked by everybody. You know, kind of like how you met me. You say I'm very down to earth. Just, you know, you met me at my cousin's bar, just hanging out, you know. And my dad was like that kind of personality, really just easygoing, loved by, you know, again, like everyone, you know, he had people that didn't like him too much, but he also had people that loved him a lot, you know. And I always say that one of my gifts right now is I'm an inspirational speaker. And one thing I share with people is that if everybody likes you, then you have a problem. And if everybody doesn't like you, you always have a problem. But you cannot really please everybody. But my dad, I understood, was really, as I said, really easygoing, very loved, very by his brothers, his sisters, his children. You know, everybody just loved being around him.
No, your auntie, your other auntie, Georgiana Charles, she says, "Good night, Patrick. Happy to see you. Happy to see you all, and happy Father's Day. Watching from St. Lucia."
Thank you, Auntie.
So your auntie is actually, and I'm sure your brother or your cousin, what, Alexander Caris,
Right.
is watching also, and your brother Noose,
Right.
for persons who may not know, is also watching. Now, so tell us, when you got to a particular age, you were told of your passing of your daddy.
Uh-huh.
Give us tell us how you felt emotionally when you heard of that passing of your dad.
I mean, it's one of those things, right? I'm not sure, you know, my son right now is also 3 years old, and he enjoys his company. You know, I enjoy being around him. I'm sure I enjoy being around my dad, but there isn't too many memories, right? And it's like if you don't have that memory, you only have memory of what you were told. So one of the things that, you know, helped me be very positive in growing up in Dominica is that everything happens for a reason. And from an early age, I understood that I have control of my destiny. And that was just part of destiny. You know, it was supposed to happen that way, right? And nothing happens to us, everything happens for us. So I never conceptually grasped it as something bad. It's just something that happened. And, you know, and again, I just look at the opportunities I had growing up and one of the things I try to do from an early age is to live to be someone that my dad would be proud of. That's one of the things I think I got from an early age. That, you know, how do I make my dad proud? Right? He's not around. Like, what would he, you know? And I remember my mom saying that he was very proud of me being born on Independence Day. Right? That was something that he would brag about as well. So what that got me from an early age was, how can I make him proud?
And if I remember, your dad was also a supporter of Patrick John in those days.
Well, I wouldn't know the political background, right?
and I knew him well.
It's one of those things that when something tragic happens, nobody really talks about it. So I didn't hear, you know, apart from even like what you told me, right? I didn't hear too many, you know, no one is telling and say, hey, this is where your dad was, and this is, I would just get bits and pieces. And ironically, I have, like, again, as I told you, I'm someone that's very forward looking, and I have 101 things that I want to do before I go to great beyond. And one of the things I have on that list is to really tell my dad's story. So one of these I actually will get deep and do some research and put that story together. And one of the ways I got that idea from is that I read that book. I don't know if too many Dominicans read it, called The Bayou of Pigs. Right? It's pretty much the other version of the the breakdown of what happened or what came to lead to the uprising from the U.S. perspective. It's called Bayou of Pigs. It's a good read, and my dad was mentioning that. I've actually mentioned India as well, and I have a picture of it I think on my Facebook. And I said the fact that these guys can tell the version of that story, I have to, in my capability, tell my dad's version and really list him as a Dominican hero. Anyone that can give up their life for saving their country or serving their country, and being shot in the line of duty, is a hero in my book, and I want to tell his story. So I'll get deep down and probably even interview you as well as part of that story and get more information for some of the questions they ask me right now. I've never been told, for lack of a better term, the full story, so to speak, just bits and pieces here and there.
Well, I'm sure that there are people who are tuned to the program. They may just call me and to tell me that they would maybe want to speak to you or meet you so that they too can give you the piece of their story, knowing your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Diva Bayer says, my first son is your cousin. I'm not so sure where the person is from. The person didn't say where they are from. I'm not so sure if you know the person. But there's Facebook names. So that's what the person name is. But the person said, my first son is your cousin. Now, you said that you raised as a boy in the community of Point Michel.
Mm-hmm.
How was it during the period of you growing up as a boy between the ages of 3 to, let's say, 9, before you became 10?
Between the age of 3 and 9. And, and it's funny that you mentioned that's a really good point to bring up, because I left Point Michel I left Dominica in 2000. So most of my memories growing up is prior to 2000. That's a really good picture you have showing here. And I actually went to church today, the Catholic Church of Point Michel. And I grew up a Christian Catholic boy. And the picture you have right now here is the picture of my first communion. So those were really good times. It was times where too many people, wasn't that wealthy, right? A lot of us didn't have running water. I grew up in that age of no running water. I remember growing up with my mom as a single parent at that time, where we didn't have lights. I remember when we got lights for the first time. So it was a very interesting period of growing up in Point Michel. But it was a time where the entire community felt like a family, and it felt like the village grew the child. And what I mean by that is I grew up in a time where a neighbor could actually spank you. A neighbor could hit you. Or if they didn't hit you, it even would be worse, because they would tell your parents and they would tell your mother, your auntie, and I have 11, 10 aunties, right? So you'd be in trouble easily. But it was, as I said, it wasn't
by mother, right?
By my mother's side.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up on my mother's side, in the village of Point Michel, and that's my cousin right here. We've been in that picture. That was I think that picture was actually taken in the gardens, and that's our first communion. And some of you might know my cousin. That's Gerald Fridges. He is in the Ministry of Health in the hospital. I think he's the CEO or some position like that.
He was actually acting some time ago,
Attorney General, economics person or something like that. All right.
What the EG stands for? Anyway.
Yeah.
Accountant General. Sorry.
But no, he is in the Ministry of Finance. But that's him right here, and he's my best friend, and he actually was the best man at my wedding as well. And he's my first cousin. But these are the times that we grew up in, where I call it fun times. And between 3 and 9, my earliest memories is just being a very academic focused boy, but having my cousins that were interested in sports and fishing and climbing trees and picking mangoes and bursting canoe, and I just I did that with them, because again, from the academic side, I was one of the kids that would read I would read all my books over the summer and even do all the assignments over the summer. And when the school time came, I was pretty bored, so I had all the time to do all the other things. And I was good at academics, but I wasn't that great at these other things.
Right? Just before you continue, just want to say that Lauren Benoit says Happy Father's Day to all.
Thank you.
The fathers out there. Sandra Sayer says that she is watching. And Diva Bayer says that she's from Dominica, living in London. Michael St. Edmonds, Etienne is watching. Albert Allington Paul is watching. David Hector says Happy Father's Day to all fathers, watching from New Jersey. And Sandra Sayer says good evening everyone and Happy Father's Day to all fathers listening and watching. Sikiat Luge is watching. And Natasha Henderson is watching. Quite a number of people. I'm not getting the numbers, but quite a number of people are actually watching as we're speaking. Yes, so continue.
Yeah, and what I kind of remember at that time, I said I was very academically focused. Again, because my education, I think I mentioned it as well, was being paid for by the Rotary Club of Dominica. So the Rotary Club, from the time I can remember, they paid for school books, they paid for...
You're talking about primary school or you're talking...
Everything, the Rotary Club.
So the Rotary, from before you enter high school, the Rotary Club actually adopted you in reference to your education.
Correct. And I'm a Rotarian right now. I'm not even sure they were supposed to do that, being a Rotarian myself right now, because the Rotary Club have what is called projects. So I like to say it was a lifelong project, and I hope I made them proud, but... Yes, they paid for my education, and we'll get to that. But a little bit more when I entered high school, I got my own scholarship, and then so whatever the government wasn't paying for, I got assisted by the Rotary Club.
Okay, so before we go into high school, let us deal a little bit about your growing up. And you said that while growing up, you all had no lights.
At some point, no lights.
At some point, let us look at that point where you had no light and no running water.
Yeah,
give us. Your experience, having to get up in the morning, having to go get water, having to go and sleep at night, there's no light. Give us that experience. Walk us through that experience.
That's a background, right? And getting a little bit into the family part of it, but I think I share it, right? So I was so my mom had me at 17, right? And we lived with my grandma. And the way the story goes, my grandma would say, hey, you have one child, that's fine. But if you get another child, I'm going to kick you out. And guess what? My mom had another child.
So you mean that's what your granny told your mom? Yeah. You mean your granny was that crude?
And I tried to raise your whole family. So,
hold on. Is it the lady they call Mattia?
Yes.
You say the word granny. People must know. People who are not from Point Michel, who maybe would have heard of the name Mattia.
Right.
So Mattia was your granny, and she was the one who told your mother, if she gets a second child, she will be kicked out.
Yeah.
No, by that time, did Teresa live with her?
I don't know. I don't know the history. But probably not Teresa was going because my mom probably was.
By that time, would Georgiana live with her?
No. They I think they were all gone because my mom is probably like number 5 or 6.
Okay.
It was close to 7.
Okay.
Right. And I guess that was her philosophy. You know, it's not a big house, right? It's like at that time, if I remember correctly, it's like a 2-bedroom house. There's only so many people that can live there. Right.
So she kicked her out.
Say that again?
So a second one came.
Yeah, a second one came, and then we got kicked out. And I actually remember.
Who's that second one? Who's the second one?
My Noose, the one you know.
Oh, Noose. Yes.
You know, and I vividly remember. So we left one part of restaurant, and then we went to somewhere close by, and we probably stayed there for maybe a year or two. Because at that time I maybe like 5, 6, 7. Right literally before the age of 10, and then I think we got evicted from that place for some reason. I don't remember the condition of that place, but I remember physically moving our clothes, moving our belongings, right from, if you don't put Michelle, from Lodbor to Sibuli, and carried my stuff on a Sunday evening, right, and moving to like a 1-bedroom house without electricity. And
again,
right across from the railway.
Again,
yeah. I don't know. I don't think the first one had electricity.
No. You said my grandma there was no electricity.
No, my grandma had electricity.
Grandma had.
Right.
Okay.
But when we got kicked out, where we moved, you just take what you get, I guess. So we moved twice. I remember moving, right? I remember physically moving, right, from Lodbor to Subuli, and we moved to a home without electricity. But we eventually got electricity, and no running water, just getting water from the neighbor's house, right?
Well, what was the experience
In
with
terms
that
of what?
no electricity? What was that
Well,
experience?
As I
Having to
said,
leave grandma home, very young boy,
right,
far from being a teenager, but you would have been accustomed to your 140 watt bulb in the house,
right.
and you would have been hearing grandma saying, "Mete Kletea off" at a
Right.
certain time in the night. Is that correct to say?
Well, I mean, you're talking someone that's about 7 years old. It's only so much memory I can have.
Okay.
If I have to remember anything, it's just messing around with my cousins.
Yeah.
That's about my age. They're still living with my grandma as well.
So
right?
now you go into that house, the first house, no electricity.
Right.
Get into the second house. So the concept of your mom was to have a home, not necessarily light. Just have a home.
Exactly.
Because she's been kicked off.
Exactly.
From the home of her mom.
Exactly.
Yeah. Go ahead to tell us what was the experience like.
I mean,
not having light.
it's one of those things where, if you're growing up where it's almost like the norm. So some had and some didn't have, right? So if it's a situation where everybody had electricity and you didn't have electricity, then you'd start thinking about what's wrong with me, what's wrong with this, what's wrong, right? But it never felt, I never conceptualized that. I never thought about it in that sense. I do remember when we got electricity, I would stay up all night reading and doing my schoolwork, right? But I wasn't conceptualizing like, well, we don't have electricity, what's wrong with us, blah, blah, blah. And again, as I said, it's a village raising the child. So what we didn't have, some neighbor would contribute in some fashion as well.
So, what would the neighbors give to you all? Because I like the fact that you say that things must be rough if your mom. Why the neighbors? And she has a second child now.
Right.
So what would have been that rough that the neighbors would have to offer? You had no dad at that time. Your dad is dead.
Right. Correct.
And here comes news.
Right. And then right after him, my other brother, that's like a year, the literary year apart came after him as well, And I remember having, and I always said to my daughter, it's like, hey, I was your age looking at my younger brothers. And she's like, what? 7, 8 years old. And my mom going and do odd jobs from cleaning homes, just doing odd jobs to make ends meet. So that experience was, I think that experience was tough from that standpoint, not knowing where the next meal coming from, not knowing where the next stuff is coming from. So that experience was tough. And as I said, it's from an early age, just knowing that education will get me out of that situation, right?
No. As you're speaking, before we continue, I just want to say to you that there's quite a number of people literally watching. Mm-hmm. So Justina Bani says that she's watching from Houston. Asquith Peanut says Happy Father's Day to you all. Snapper Laura says that he's watching. Your Aunt Teresa Fridges was saying that I love this picture. That's a picture of yourself and her son. Christina Riley, maybe she knows you very well. She said Happy Father's Day. Patrick watching from Miami, Florida. Reginald Winston says that he's watching. Lincoln Jura is watching from Canada. And he says, Happy Father's Day, great day, guys. Rosalind Savre McLean says that she's watching from New York. Audrey Detouche says that she is watching. Wilbert Willis is watching. Felix Gegwa, you know Felix Gegwa very well.
I do.
Right, is watching. Wilbert Willis says, Bonsoir, Lakou de la Dominique. And Loftus Bell, very interesting life story. Listening attentively. Glenda Defoe says, good night, watching from Sabre. Yes. So, your mom has to do the odd jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Where was the other dads? or the other dad? Where were they?
Right. So my mom actually had her. So my mom only has boys. My mom has 5 boys, and I'm the oldest of 5 boys, and my 4 younger brothers is with my stepdad, and my stepdad himself has a number of children. I was speaking with him today. He said he has like 44 kids, right? And so back then, men had a lot of kids.
It's not fair. It's not fair as we go along. Just saying, my stepdad. I know you're trying to be professional, but we're talking about the history.
Right.
So let's go back a little bit.
Uh-huh.
You said your mom name was what?
My mom is Gloria Felix.
AKA?
They call her Bam Bam.
Bam Bam. AKA Bam Bam.
Yes.
Right. So everybody in Point Michelle know AKA Bam Bam. We can say she's one of the people in the community that quite a number of people have pleasure when they are with her. She can make you laugh. She can make you cry in a good way. She's dramatic. A person that the community of Point Michelle really love to be around.
I think my mom would say growing up that her tongue has no holes.
I like that. Her tongue has no holes.
Yeah.
All right. And then you said your adopted dad.
Uh-huh.
And he said that he had some 34 children.
That's what he told me today. Yes.
Right.
And
I believe him.
I call him dad. I
believe him.
I
believe him.
Yes.
Because you said that his last name is Dominic.
Dominic, yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm sure that many people might be thinking already, which Dominic, but I rather it comes from you.
Right. So my stepdad is Harold Dominic.
That's the guy they call Saw.
Correct.
Right. Saw. Yeah. Go ahead.
So where was I? Yeah. So before the age of 10, we didn't live with my stepdad, right? So my mom was a single parent. We live, I said, in Subuli. I actually looked at that property the other day, just driving down because the Ravine, and I was telling my kids that's where I grew up. And growing up there, I have a lot of I'll actually show them out right now the Dangle Bands. I don't know if you know Arthur Dangle Band and his kids and his family. They were very gracious to us growing up. And I think his son, Dale Dangleben, who's a doctor, he just built a clinic in Point Michelle. And they had a grand opening yesterday, actually. And I didn't stop by, but I will stop by in the future. But yeah, the family was really good to us as well, And, as I said, is growing up in those times, I didn't think too many people had a lot. And it was just a norm. So I didn't necessarily feel sorry for myself growing up. As I said, I just focused on education. A lot of my family encouraged me. I don't think I ever had, I don't think there was ever a moment I didn't have any, because again, having such a big family, I was always fed and I was always well taken care of from that standpoint. But what they did, all of them reinforced in hindsight, right, to focus on education. Additionally, if they would see me hanging out with the wrong crowds, because as you know, and even probably to this day, but especially in that time, there's no second chances if you don't take your schoolwork serious. And there's, even right now, there's no real professional sports here in Dominica. People don't get paid to play sports. People get paid when you're educated. And that's something that's really enforced with me and re-encouraged at any step. So something I didn't mention to you is that I was also, in that time frame, pre-common entrance, I was a straight A student. And at the end of every classroom, every school year, they gave prizes. And I'd always be number one, first place. Right? So I was always the first. And the community encouraged that. So if they notice that, like even in that time, talking about between the ages of 3 and 9, if you were a young kid, you could not be seen hanging out in a bar playing pool, right? And if you were one of those kids, they would say your future is almost hopeless, right? You should be home. You shouldn't be out past 6 p.m. That's the time I grew up in. I couldn't be seen hanging out in bars and just being on the streets like that, even if you were a boy. So that's the time and if someone saw you in the community, they tell you go home, go and do your homework, and they'll tell your mom on you and that kind of stuff. So that's the environment I grew up in. That's my my recollection growing up in Point Michel. And as I said, I see everybody as family. Everybody look out for you, and we knew everybody.
So growing up at that period, as you said, was very challenging. Let's talk a little bit about church, because we have quite a lot to talk about. We have foods to talk about, but let's talk a little bit about church. I heard you said earlier on that you were a Christian Catholic, or a
Grew
Catholic
up.
Christian,
Correct.
right? And give us a little background of your church life as a boy growing up.
Right. I mean, so growing up here, I went to church regularly, and I went to St. Luke's primary school. So it's run by the nuns and the Catholic community, and we were encouraged to do religious classes. And I did First Communion, I did confirmation, and I was talk about my grandma. My grandma went to church as often as she could, and something that I think that might be lacking in our youth these days. If any young person's listening, or even person my age, encourage your children to listen to their grandparents. So we haven't brought up my grandparents in this conversation, and I might even get emotional because my grandparents were like parents to me. Both my grandpa that passed away a few years ago and my grandma. They were really big influences in my life, And I listened to them, and I think I've listened to even you speak to some other guests on your program, and you ask them, can you speak Creole and all that stuff. And even me, I learned Creole, and I think I'm fluent in Creole because of my grandpa, and they call him Tia, they call him Bo, and he couldn't speak English, but he was one of my first role models. He couldn't speak English, but he could do everything else. He's a cultural icon. Cultural icon, mason, carpenter, fisherman, and everybody loved him. I haven't heard not one person. As I said, my own dad, it might be like mixed blessings. I haven't heard anyone said.
Take your time.
Yeah.
It's an emotional period, but take your time. Yeah.
Yeah, when I went to my grandparents, I tend to get emotional, but yeah, my grandpa, nobody has ever said anything bad about him, So that really gets me emotional. But there's some fun times, growing up with my grandpa, I enjoyed hanging around him,
You're saying that because you remember in quite a lot of things, outside of the fact that people never said anything bad about him.
Yeah.
But he would have taught you the culture.
Yeah.
I understood that he taught every one of you all to dance and to chate the Belle songs.
Yeah.
He was very much influential into the community of Point Michel.
But it's interesting that you're talking about him from that standpoint, right? And I'm here and I'm expressive, but something you don't know about me is that I was very shy growing up. I didn't speak that much. And I spoke with her lips, and even we haven't got to that point, but I spent the last 24 years in the US, and even by Dominican standard, I spoke very quickly. I spoke with her lips, and a lot of times no one would understand what I say growing up. So I wasn't that expressive. One of the few of his kids that cannot sing and cannot dance, and I can try, but yeah, even I remember a few years ago, my Auntie Teresa's on right now. She's like, Pato can talk. Because I wasn't talking growing up. I was shy. I spoke with her lips. And yeah, it's like, but I wasn't that expressive. I guess now, I've done a lot of personal and professional development. So I'm more self-expressive. But growing up at that time, I was just what you want to call a stereotypical book nerd. Right, I wasn't talking. I mean, so I wasn't dancing. I wasn't singing. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. But I did everything else with my grandfather. He had chicken coops in the backyard. He would tell us go and chase the chickens, I'd hang around with him. He'd cook his broth. I'd get all that stuff, but I was not one of those that could sing and dance. That's where I was going with that.
Okay, before we continue, let me just say that Leonard Alexander said that Happy Father's Day, Patrick, coming from Uncle Victor.
Thank you.
Cecil, that's ex-fireman Alex. So,
yes.
Secret Impress Loftus Bell, that was reminding us that he was Rambo. Your adopted father was also called Rambo. Roma Douglas says, good night all. And Georgiana Charles said, courage, my nephew. I know why she said so. And Albert Allington Paul said, my old schoolmate, SMA days. Can't believe I didn't recognize you when I saw you on Friday. With age comes wisdom and bad eyesight. That's an excuse, right?
It's my fault too. I actually recognize him. I saw Albert at the pizza shop in that pizza shop on the Bayfront. My kids wanted pizza, the American kids. I want pizza, but free or some pizza, pizza. And I saw Albert. It just didn't click to make the conversation, but I recognize him.
No, Fee Francis says granddad taught him Creole. So I'm not sure if you know that person. Teresa said, Pato, you have... She said that you have made her cry. You have her cried. Wow. Sorry about that, Teresa. Yes, and the messages are coming. Oh, that is Tia Francis, Rambo, Dominic Polis. All right. Yes, so here it is. You said that your granddad tried, was every other grandchild of Mr. Tia would have said that at 3:30 when you all come from school, he would ensure that you all would dance and ensure that you all would sing. And everybody had to be underneath the cellar to do that, to include his children, Teresa, Georgiana, the others.
Right.
And it's amazing that you said that you were not talking and you didn't dance. How did you escape from Grandpa?
That's what I'm saying.
Especially Mattia. How did you escape from Mattia?
Well, again, there's a lot of us, right? So it's easy to escape. You just have to keep quiet. I was quiet and just I observe and I look and I said I did everything else, right? So anything else he needed me to do, I was always right there. I was always right there when he was cooking and doing stuff. And I remember him, for lack of a better word, butchering chickens and chasing them. I'd help him play them. I would help him. I'd do everything else.
I like that word.
But
I like that word that you just used. That is the Lakou word. Play me. And I can hear some people laughing in the background. And when you said play me, and I had to, take it on board because I didn't want it to pass straight.
Right.
Play me the birds.
Yeah,
or the fowls.
The fowls, yes.
Yeah, play me the fowls. Yeah.
Play me the fowls. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't do the singing and dancing, but everything else, help him clean the fish. And it's like Bo. He called us Bo Alifesa. And he was a fun person to be around. He was really, really, really fun to be around.
All right. And while you're on the grandparents, what about your grandma, Mattia?
So I like to say my grandma was the real disciplinarian. My grandma didn't mess around. She didn't mess around. She'd keep you on the straight and narrow, but you know that she has a kind heart, and she knows she loves all of us. And somebody said it's like I have a lot of reverence for my grandparents. I always listen to them. So my grandma tell me to do something, I do it. She tell me time to go inside, I not question, I not get a no kind of back shot. Even when I was an adult, I just couldn't do it, and I just knew that she had the best of heart, right? And she'd also make sure, she always make sure I was always fed, I was always properly taken care of, and I wanted to say that she always had my back. Even though when you saw one of the pictures you shared in the flyer, it's my grandma there with a pirate hat. That pirate hat, I'm sorry. And there's a pirate. So there's a funny story about that. That it's the funny. My grandma passed away recently, and my cousin is asking me for pictures of my grandma and myself. And ironically, that's the only I'm surprised I didn't take other pictures before over the years. But that's one of the only ones I could find. And the exact same, he said my cousin, my auntie, the exact same statement they made 27 years ago, in 1995, when I graduated from SMA, is the same statement. Like, why is my grandma wearing that hat? And my grandma, if you know my grandma, she is her own personality. You cannot tell her what to do. And she wore a pirate hat to my graduation. But when you want to say, so my grandma was I want to say my rock. So my mom was a young parent. So when my mom couldn't, too busy working or doing something, couldn't attend certain school functions, PTA meetings, graduations, report cards, distribution, my grandma was always there. And since my grandma was always there, I actually got emotional when I came down for a funeral because of that. And we were at her home, and I had to break down again on a finger that says how you saw I break down talking to my grandpa because I hadn't thought about him in a long time. Right? So the same thing, my grandma was talking about her. I was like, I couldn't remember a time when she wasn't there. She was always there. And the time she wasn't there is when she passed away. So growing up, my grandma was literally always there. And always there for me and always loved me and, would always light a candle for me. And, someone say, hey, if you're successful now, I say, that's my grandma. Did all her prayers and lighting candles for me over the years and just always keeping my prayers. And if you get me to talk more about my grandma, I probably get emotional again.
Wow. Well, the alumni of St. Mary's Academy said on behalf of them, the community of St. Mary's Academy, they are truly proud of you, Patrick.
Thank you.
The alumni of St. Mary's Academy.
And I at some point, I do want to get into SMA and conversations.
We'll come to that.
And Brother Jermaine.
We must come to that.
And my upbringing in the Catholic school system and how they also take care of persons that come from humble beginnings as well.
So now you have given us the stories of both your grandma and your grandpa. Very interesting stories, and you became emotional for the both of them. That's fine. Now you would have had cousins because your grandma had, as you said, how many children?
12.
12.
Right.
And so you had quite a number of cousins in that yard, basically. Help us to have a greater understanding as to the things that you and your cousin would have done. Some of the méchanceté things that you would have done. I deliberately use the word méchanceté.
Right. And you call them cousins, and for me they were more like brothers and sisters growing up, right? Because even my as I said, my brother Noose is like 4 years younger than me, 5 years younger than me, and growing up, someone that much younger than you don't want them to hang out with you, right? So you understand that my cousin Gerald, he's like 4 months younger than me. We grew up like brothers, right? My cousin Sheppy, everybody knows Sheppy.
You want to hold a while before that thought goes. I want us to come back to your cousins, but it's important to make that note. Paula Warner, who was the writer, let me just pull it up. I don't know who called her. She's in, I think, Nevis. Yes, Independent Baby is 10. It was written by Paula Warner. Yes, that's what the paper says. I think it's the Chronicle. And Paula just sent me a note via Facebook. And she said, whoa, fantastic young man he has grown up to be. I have always wondered about him and what life offered him since we spoke when he was 10. Happy to see him. I offer him my congratulations and best wishes no matter where the future takes him. Happy Father's Day to you both. Wow, that is touching. From Paula Warner.
Wow. And again, 10 years old, I know it was, I think she worked, as you said, for the Chronicle. I don't recall exactly. I haven't seen her since that time, so, but yes. Thank you.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I wish I could just, because you see, I don't know how to function this thing. And yes, I have my glasses, but the words are so small that I can't even read the things that Paula would have said. I can read the big bold words. But I can't even. Would you have remembered what she wrote about you?
Well, It's right there, right?
Yes, but I'm saying maybe it's big on your screen there, right?
Yeah, it's big on my screen. It's big on my
So
screen.
if it's big on your screen,
She's actually talking about somebody we're talking about right now.
yeah.
About
So you can read what she.
Yes,
really,
yes.
I honestly cannot see it. So.
it's essentially a lot of what we were talking about before I turned 10 years old.
Uh-huh.
About the Rotary Club paying for my education, me taking my schoolwork serious, my father being killed, being a sixth grader in Point Michel School, talking about some of what my grandma said about what's going on with me at that time. And yeah, it's a lot of what we discuss. That's what's being said there in a quick summary.
Okay, so okay, thank you for that. That is why I wish this thing could really open so I could have make the public know exactly what is written about you.
But this is on YouTube. Would they have seen this that article or
Okay.
no?
It would have been on YouTube.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so we can refer people to the YouTube.
But I gave a synopsis of what's been said there as well,
Okay.
and we've delved into a lot of what's been said there.
Okay, all right. So yes, you're talking about your cousin Frigis, the Frigis family.
Yeah.
Sheppy and
Yeah. So we grew up as I said, we grew up as like brothers and sisters. Brothers and I saw my cousins more like brothers and sisters because a lot of them were close to age with me. And, if I was the one that was taking schoolwork serious, right, then they were not, And if you want to talk about, there was actually something pretty scary. So Sheppy, I don't want to put his business out there, but as a kid, he would do a lot of stuff. He would really do a lot of stuff. And I have a vivid memory of, Christmas time. I was maybe about 8 or 9 years old. And I'd gotten like a ball for Christmas, and I think we were playing. It's called There by Card as soon as you get into Point Michel, and we were playing in that yard there, and I kicked the ball, and the ball got stuck between electrical poles right there. And you know what he did? He went to climb to get Bessie's hat, and he got electrocuted. Pretty scary stuff.
you serious?
And it's not next level, like just a little touch, but he fell down, right? it's not anything next level, right? But it's I didn't think it would be awesome, but he fell down. And the other kind of stuff that, he would do is just, I want to call him the daredevil, man.
So there's no mistake why he's at Dumlek now.
He's no mistake. He's at Dumlek now.
You see what the yard has done?
Yeah,
you see what the Lakou has done? He's now at Dumlek.
He's been Dumlek for the last 30, 40 years.
Right.
But that was shabby for you, and with Ron and Cecil, and remember them how I learned how to swim as well. His older brother, we call him Youthful, he's in Houston right now. That's my Auntie Teresa's first son, and we would learn to swim. They would take us to the sea every day, taking a sea bath, and at 3-4 years old, just have you on the shore, and at some point they would bring you out on a big rock in the sea. They call it Kai Sea or something like that, and they would tell you that you'd have to swim, you'd have to sleep there or swim to the shore, and that's how we learned to swim. That's how I learned to swim. So either going to sleep on that rock or swim to the shore.
That is a common story I've heard of every person in Point Michel at a very tiny, tender age of between 3 and 5.
Correct.
An adult would have taken a child, bring that child to that rock, and ilaje and tell him you have to swim to the shore.
Right.
But I fall, fuka.
But it's in hindsight, right? It's not really fall or fool because it's not your very first time. They bring you in the sea, they bring you there every day. When I think about it, right, it wasn't really. There was a method to the madness, if you want to call it that, because if you're in the sea every day, at some point you kind of know how to swim, right? Even like for example, my son, he doesn't know how to swim. They take him to a pool. What they have him doing? They call him blowing bubbles. Pretty much stick it in the water and spray it out. How many times we would have done that if they brought us to that sea every day for like a whole 2 years. So we kind of know how. Always do. We just kind of scared, but we kind of know how to swim already, right? So if they brought you at the very first time and they did that, then it's craziness, right? But all you really have is just a fear, and not like they would stay on the road. They're right there on the shore. And when ironically they got older, it's just like they could get to us in like 2 steps. But as a 3-5-year-old, you're not really conceptualizing that, right? So there's a method. I want to say there's a method to the madness. So you kind of know how to swim already. You're just kind of scared of taking that plunge, because I don't think that when they brought us out to that rock and they asked us to swim to the shore, that's when we learned how to swim. We already know how to swim, you know. And I used to, like, for example, there's a joke of one of my, I think I'll call him out, there's one of our cousin as well. His name is Nanton, and they call him Tattoo Kid, right? So he's one that does most of the tattoo for persons in Point Michel, even in Rosa as well. And there was before, I think they're still there, the rocks under the cliff in Point Michel. He used to like to fish with one of my cousins. That's Ron Elia's brother. His name is Ronaldson. And they would go out there and they would go to fish. And he lives right by the bayside, but he couldn't swim. But he's out there fishing, and he caught we call it a Kong, an eel. He caught a Kong, and the Kong pulled him in the water. And guess what he did? He swam to shore. But before that day, he couldn't swim. So there's a lot of fun memories, man, growing up. There's a lot of fun things that we did, you know, growing up. And in hindsight, a lot of times we think it was Mishaste, but it's just kids being kids. And one of the things that our older siblings or cousins would do is they would pick on us. So if you're the younger one, they would tell you to go and pick mangoes or climb the tree and, you know, that kind of stuff, right? If you're playing Cowboy and Indians, you're the one they would tie. That what I thought was a little bit wicked. They would tie you up and have ants in the niche of sand, of ants, you know. Those little things was a little bit mischievous.
So your aunt said, Georgiana said, it was not crazy. 1-on-1, the rock, and one by your side. So 1-on-1, and then somebody on the rock, and there'll be somebody by your side.
Right, exactly. They were there. I mean, we remained that we were on the rock. You know, who was right there, right, in case something happened. And I said, it wasn't your first time. You'd have been in that sea every day for about 2 years.
David Mantana said that he's watching, and also Claudette Dangaben Yuseb said that she's watching. Edwina London is watching. And Curtis Grell is also watching. Quite a number of persons are on. Over 1.2 viewers already. It says quite a lot of what you brought to the table. Now, so we speak a little bit of your cousins. What about your aunts? What kind of, and uncles? What kind of role models that they were to you in your growing up? What did they bring to the table?
You know, I want to say they were almost like de facto parents. And when I think about them, I again, tears came to my ear as well. I'm happy I came down from my grandma's funeral. And that was one of the first time I told them in as far as I could remember, that all of them is in one room. And what I really got is that each of them is about 1 or 2 years apart. So imagine having 12 kids, right? And I just couldn't imagine the household that they grew up in. And I think the ones I were closer to is the ones that are, again, closer to age with me. And they were just like big, some of my aunts, the younger ones were like big sisters. The older ones were like moms, right? And they would just, same thing, just take care of me and make sure, and always stressing, taking care of being educated. And one of the things my cousin Gerald teased me about, that I used to boast that on a Sunday I would have like 5 lunches. So I was a really chubby, I was a chubby kid.
You say chubby people, we say fat.
But no, I see
the
some.
Yard, let's use the yard too.
When I watch some of those pictures back in the day, I tell you, not me that was fat. It's only that was Meg. I telling you, I have a cousin, I have a picture of my cousin Shep. He even like sticks all you see in his head. Right, and his brother, and that's what I say. Watching them, I say that was Meg. I wasn't fat, but he, I took on my aunts, and just growing up, my cousin Gerald told me, I used to brag to me eating like 4 lunches, and I did. I would have had a routine, especially on Sunday, where everybody cook a lot of food, right? probably eat breakfast at my home, then go by one aunt, get a second breakfast, go somewhere else, get a food breakfast, get lunch somewhere else, then go in the sea, stay for 2-3 hours, woke up appetite, and get lunch again, second lunch somewhere else, probably end up at my grandma at some point, and then back home and eventually eat my own lunch, you know. But that is, that's lunch from aunts, uncles, and right, and but yeah, so that's one of the really fun things. And my aunts would look out for me. That even that picture you saw me there with Gerald, I am pretty sure that was my Aunt Mary that took me, his sister Erica, my aunt Tricia, and my aunt Anne Philip had done confirmation as well around the same time, took us to the gardens and took pictures of us, right? And when you want to get persons that not, again, people also this, I grew up in Dominica, so they know that taking pictures of just even having a camera was costly back in those days, and that was a big deal. And having a vehicle, back in the late 80s, even now, I guess, having a vehicle in Dominica can be considered something costly. And, my Aunt Mary would take us and, take us on picnics and take us places and take pictures and, look out for us. And yeah, those memories, man, are really, really, really fun memories. So that's my memories of my aunts and my uncles, right? I have 2 uncles, Kennedy and Corbo. We call him son, we call him Corbo. And these guys, they took care of us. And that's one of the things about having a large family and having aunts and uncles that's not too much older than you as well, and have them look out for you. And they did a lot. And this program not even long enough to talk about the influence and the things that they did for me and my other cousins as well.
Okay, so far you have 48 comments, 8 shares, and 1.6 views. It speaks volume of what you are actually talking about here this evening, Patrick, and I'm very happy that you are able to get so many various views tonight. No, we were talking about the church.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the church. What kind of influence did the church have on you as a boy growing up? We know in those days, boys would have been boys, meaning that they would be troublesome in the yard, vehicle wash, send stones, and people, kuye muno, call the elderly some kind of messed up name, and the likes, going to people's garden, walking their mangoes when it's mango season and so on. So what did the church do to help you to stay on track?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. As I said, the church and the school and the community. I guess fortunately I wasn't one of those kids that would be doing some of those things. I might fall in now and again, but if I got caught falling one of those kids, I would get in trouble. I'd get in a lot of trouble. And as far as the church goes, it's I went to church every Sunday. I had a deep belief in God and deep belief in the teachings of the church. And as I said, one of the things about growing up in a small community, everybody knows you. So I saw some of my primary school teachers today at church, and it's like all of these people have influence. And what you want to get is that if you try to do some of those things you're talking about, the person that you see in the community, the older person that would see you, is someone that if you trying to be a good kid, you'd really get in trouble and you'd revere. And the community is like 99% Catholic, all of us, it's them in church and God-fearing and church-going. So just knowing all of the teachings and paying attention to them. The only thing I wasn't growing up, I wasn't an acolyte. But as far as well-behaved and, listening to, reading the Bible, reading the Gospels, we would have we'd do this first communion, the cataclysmic, not using the right term, but these classes we would do, and we'd have these books, I'd read all of them, and
Catechism,
right. I would do that. We would do that all the time, and I read all of his books, and I wouldn't miss, even being sick, right? I would not miss school. I would not miss these classes. So I was really religious. I was really studious, and I remember going on permission. We had the nuns there, the priests right there, and I was fairly well behaved and kept on the straight and narrow. And a lot of it I can definitely attribute to the teachings of the church. And if we're going to get into as well, just some religious perspective, as you said, that I'm an inspirational speaker. And one of the things that I talk about, I saying that, if we go back 2,000 years, the technology that they were using back then is absolute today, most of it, right? There's hardly anything that they used back then that is still relevant today. But one thing, ironically, that is still relevant is the Ten Commandments, right? You look at those, no matter what religious faith you're in, right? Even if you're Jewish, there's the Ten Commandments, and it's still present today. That's the only stuff you can take from 2,000 years ago that's really relevant today. So we still have a lot of work to do as far as it comes from morals and morality, and not trying to get too much into religious belief, but I don't tell anybody that doesn't believe in God that's ready for that, that the teachings of God and the Bible is, it's still relevant today. And if we really adopt it, we'll have a better society, we'll have a better world as well. And that's the kind of, that's the kind of upbringing, that's the kind of influence I want to say that the church had on my life and still have on my life today.
It is, Jared Joe Frigis says, this program has me emotional. I can understand why. But it is strange to hear you say so much about your faith and your church, and you never saw the need to be an altar boy or an acolyte. Why not?
Well, I think I probably wasn't chosen, and then, my mom had me pretty, a single parent. She had me pretty guarded growing up. I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things, right? So it's pretty much come home and stay home. I mean, I remember my mom coming home and I told her I live in this single dwelling with her, and I'd force my brothers to take naps. I'd probably beat them. So you go and take a nap so I can leave them napping and go and play. And my mom came home and I was out there playing football or anything, she would beat me. So if your mom is beating you to be inside when she asks you to be inside, I don't think I had the opportunity to be an altar boy, anything like that, I was pretty sheltered. It's like pretty much home, school, get some opportunities to do certain things, right? And in the summertime, and the same thing if one of my older cousins not there, I don't think I can ever remember a time of me being out by myself growing up.
I know that your adopted father was a strict guy
Yes,
on the road.
Mm-hmm.
I know that. What about when he was at home? Was he a strict guy?
Even more strict. Even more strict, and it's like I was, I think I hit, so when you talk about, I think if you want to get also to my rebellious streak, I think I hit my rebellious streak when I became a teenager, right? So I wanted to do what other teenagers was doing, right? I got into high school and I think that I'm grown, right? And stay out all night and so way to go jam. I didn't forget into that stage, but me and my stepdad would butt heads all the time, And I used to think that my stepdad just didn't like me growing up, especially at a rebellious age. And knowing what I know now, I was like, man, if something had happened to me when I would stay out all night at 14 years old, right? 13, 14 years old, staying out all night in a jam, walking up on the Point Michelle cliff, right? If something happened to me, you know what they would blame, right? Right? I wouldn't get the blame. My stepdad is the one I would get that blame. And that's why he was so strict on me and us growing up. But only after, and they didn't have the language. And even at that time, even if they did have the language, at that time growing up, parents don't talk to you like that. They just tell you not to do it. You live under my roof and you have to obey my rules. That's all they'll tell you. They wouldn't tell you that, hey, if something happened to you, I'm the one that's going to get the blame. Right? They really talk to you like how I'm talking to you right now. Right? It's only after you get older, you get wiser. Right? That's really, imagine me raising kids right now. My daughter trying to stay out all night at 13 years old. Right? 13, 14, because we grew up quickly down here. 13, 14, I'm in third form, fourth form, fifth form. I graduated at 15. And trying to be that rebellious teenager staying out all night, that literally was madness.
Now, it's a good way to get into high school.
Yeah.
So, before we do that, Lester JB is saying that he's watching, and Mary Williams says that she's watching from Martinique. So, you are there. If a number of people really, listening to your story. No. We spoke about from the ages of between 5 to 9. Now you have to sit your common entrance, and as you said, you were a bright boy. It happened that you had been a bright boy. So at every stage in primary school, your name would have been mentioned for an award, and that would be at the St. Luke's Primary School.
Correct. It was almost automatic. Yeah. If I wasn't there, I'd be like, what happened? Right?
Yeah. No. Walk us through common entrance, meaning your preparation for common entrance and the day of common entrance.
But before,
I know that you would remember that.
Yeah, before I get to that point, something very monumental happened when I was 10 years old. That's the article you were showing. Around that same time, the government of Dominica decided that we celebrated Reunion 88 when I turned 10 years old in 1988. Right, that was probably 2 years before I did common entrance. And they said that the 5 babies born that day, if they just got a regular pass in common entrance, then they would be awarded a scholarship to go to high school. And back that conversation is going to come up later on. And the preparation for common entrance was very interesting. It was very brutal, right? And because I don't say brutal, it was pressure packed. And somebody needs to go through that recently. And I was even telling about stories about, do you know what it means to be if you don't get a scholarship, it means to be a scholar goat. She's like, what? You gotta get a scholar goat. The expectation is so high. And the idea of going to school being in the blackboard, where you spend much time behind the blackboard, that you went to school behind the blackboard, you not that you didn't get that intelligence. And it was a pressure situation. And even back there, only a few students that passed the common entrance exam would have gone to high school. And one of the things I remember coming up to that point is that they would say, hey, there are students that have been like you that have straight A's, and they would fail common entrance. So there was a lot of like incoming permission, even maybe there's a superstition growing up. So they tell you not to touch, not to borrow someone's pencils, not to take recess from them, not to, right? All this kind of superstition because they say someone is spoiling, someone to have you not know that exam. And, superstitions are very interesting, but really, I like to be educated for the learning of things. It's really what is called exam anxiety. And fortunately, I never had what is called exam anxiety. So for me, once the stakes was high, I would show up, right? So I took myself very serious. I listened to my teachers, all my extra classes, and that kind of stuff. I would, I would do my schoolwork, right? I would be very, very focused. And so that's leading up to common entrance. And again, I remember one of my actually today. She was again a very strict teacher. That was Teacher Mary. Grade 7. She was a real star at that age, a real staple teacher. I think she was taught my mom, right? And I saw her today. I still think she would teach, but she says she's happily retired. And she's one of the teachers that really had a lot of influence on me, and having me take my school very serious. And when I did common entrance, I passed number 13 out of the entire all the students that did the exam. So I got my own scholarship when I did that exam, and at that age, I decided that our government owed me a scholarship, And I'll come back later on as the story progresses.
So you came number 13.
Yes.
You were 10 years of age.
Not at that time, maybe 10, 11, I guess, 1990. 11, I've been until that year. But in 88, that's when they said that if you pass whatever you do entrance, you'd have gotten a scholarship if you passed. So I was about 11.
Okay. So you got the result. You were excited. I can imagine Bam Bam. I can imagine so. Zapamwe. And they beat in your chest. And I can imagine Matia. What these all say, intelligent, il dans la tête. I can hear Mr. Tia say, vous savez, ça va, on content. On va regarder pour demain, on va aller, ça, on va aller faire. Please, I can hear the old people, having that kind of conversation with you. And preparing your day, you have to go to school. But before I go to the day that you have to go to school, tell us how did you choose the school that you have to go to? Because in those days, you had to write a form, on the document, what school you wanted to go to. But how did that finally?
Again, just thinking back, again, your youth and upbringing can have a lot of influences on you. So at that time, in grade 7, I was going to be between SMA and grammar school, right? It's the way the story goes is like, so when you're a straight A student, teachers like straight A students, so you cannot almost become teacher's pet. So every class has probably in its top 5 favorite of a teacher, right? And I remember in grade 7, right, I was the teacher's pet, and there was this, I probably wouldn't call her name, right? But there's this girl that's next to me, and she made up a story about the teacher, and she wanted to tell the teacher that, Patrick is what I said, some real nasty. It's not that nasty, but that's something that the teacher, I don't remember exactly, but something nasty about the teacher. And she went to see that I said that, right? And again, I remember I was almost like a goody boy. I wasn't doing things to get me in trouble, And I remember they told my mom, and because I was a goody boy, my mom believed that. I'm not sure if the teacher believed that, but it was a whole scandal. If I got in trouble, I probably got beat. And because of that, I decided that I'm not going to go to any school with girls because of trouble. So that made my decision to go to SMA, a done deal.
Okay. I just want to find out if my technicians are listening.
Right.
I'm told that my audio is muffling, or it's muffled. If they are listening, because from my end, I'm hearing the audio very well. Good, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure. The people on Facebook feel the same way. If it is, it's informing. If it's not, it's informing. I'll appreciate that. But thank you for the information. The importance and power of communication. So you decided to go to SMA because of that young lady.
Yeah,
Because you're going to the grammar school.
Yeah,
As girls, and you don't get yourself into no kind of tie.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So just for listeners, you have made my decision. I made my decision to choose SMA. Because a lot of people that I admired before, it was a very close, it was a tie. I probably was destined to go to SMA. Along with a lot of people that I admired, went to SMA. But that's still the deal. That little incident, still the deal.
Okay. So you have crossed that hurdle. Decided that you were to go to SMA. What was your first class? What was the first class you went to at SMA?
I'm 101. My teacher, my homeroom teacher. Was Christian. He's the Calshonian, Christian. He was my what do you call him? Sharp tooth. He was my homeroom teacher. And I ended up teaching SMA a few years later with him. I went to SMA. The principal was Brother Jimmy for those 5 years I was at SMA. And Brother Jimmy has been a great mentor and friend over the years. A lot of reverence and a lot of, a lot of, even, Brother Jimmy wasn't like a father figure to me as well. Going to SMA, and my SMA story is very, very, I want to say, became a man. So one of the things...
You want to hold a while because I'm hearing I'm getting from the Facebook people that the audio is really muffled and very, very, very bad, and that's not good. And again, I'm asking the technicians listening, please get in touch with me so that we can fix the situation. And so in between time, now let's just take a few promos so that I can have a chance to call the technicians who are supposed to be on duty. Everybody beware, you better prepare. It sounds like an everybody beware, you better prepare.
Do you live in an area which requires evacuation if a tropical weather system threatens? If you live in a flood-prone area or you're close to the coast, then you will need to evacuate. Let someone know where you're going. Also, if you live on an outlying island, you should evacuate once a watch is issued. Sadira, your local disaster office, and this radio station urge you not to be caught off guard this hurricane season. Be aware and be prepared.
Beware, it sounds like an island and it's even beware. Everybody beware, you better prepare. It sounds like an island. Don't let the disaster catch you off guard. Together, make it from the hurricane. Everybody beware, you better prepare. It sounds like an island and it's even beware. Everybody beware, you better prepare.
If you live on a hillside or a mountainside, or even in a high-rise building, then the winds during a storm or hurricane can be 10 to 30 miles an hour stronger than at sea level. You should either take additional precautions to protect your property or evacuate. Let someone know where you're going. Sadira, your local disaster office, and this radio station urge you not to be caught off guard this hurricane season. Be aware and be prepared.
Everybody beware, you better prepare. It sounds like an island and it's even beware. Everybody beware, you better prepare. It sounds like an island. Everybody beware, you better prepare. It sounds like an island and it's even beware. Everybody beware, you better prepare.
When a warning is issued for a tropical storm or hurricane, it means that your area is expected to become affected by strong winds and rain within 24 hours. Now is the time to rush evacuation to completion and safeguard your family and your property. Sadira, your local disaster office, and this radio station urge you not to be caught off guard this hurricane season. Be aware and be prepared.
Everybody beware, you better prepare. It sounds like an island and it's even beware. Everybody beware, you better prepare. It sounds like an island. Don't let the disaster catch you off guard. Together, make it from the hurricane. Everybody beware, you better prepare. It sounds like an island and it's even beware. Everybody beware, you better prepare.
Do you live in an area which requires evacuation if a tropical weather system threatens? If you live in a flood-prone area or you're close to the coast, then you will need to evacuate. Let someone know where you're going. Also, if you live on an outlying island, you should evacuate once a watch is issued. Sadira, local disaster office, and this radio station urge you not to be caught off guard this hurricane season. Be aware and be prepared.
Everybody beware, better prepare. It sounds like an island and it's even beware. Everybody beware, you better prepare. It sounds like an island and it's
Let's remember to say good morning, thank you, excuse me, and I'm sorry. Simple acts of courtesy help make our world a much better place.
A message from the National Cultural Council and DBS Radio.